Jamie McLennan, TSN analyst, host,
entertainer,
great guy, entertainer.
Yep. What's a prognosticator?
That's someone who predicts the future.
Agitator.
Yeah. Shit disturbers more.
It's like when you have a crystal ball. Do you have a crystal ball? Does TSN have one of those in there where you kind of...
I do need a crystal ball. You were just talking about a crystal waters.
Yeah.
My plumber was literally 8 feet away from me fixing that sink right there. And you literally like, you need a plumber? He like looked at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike
do house calls?
Waters. I love him.
Yeah. So, it's what it is. Something goes wrong. Oh, geez, we need somebody. And then
my head is too big.
Yeah. Do you want to start Googling or start looking around? No, it's just Crystal Waters. Good.
Exactly.
We're done.
That's the way to do it. And I'm not an agitator. I just feel like I speak my mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I've got a face that people want to smack, but other than that, it's all good. I heard you talking about Kuzmenko. I agree with you. Like there's a reason why he was so polarizing in Vancouver. He'd either be a world beater or you wouldn't hear his name on a broadcast for 3 games straight.
Yeah. Rick Tocchet was done.
I was calling a game last night in Buffalo and Ottawa, and I went on the talk back to my producer and I said, have you heard this guy's name? Like, I can't remember who it was. It was like Drake Batherson or something. I said, you heard Batherson's name once tonight? Because usually when your top players are engaged, play-by-play is talking about him. You got to weigh in on. There's a good chance here or whatever. There's nights where I watch the Flames, and I'm like, that Kuzmenko, I haven't heard his name. You don't hear Abs say his name once, or, here, great chance by Kuzmenko. What a pass. What a defensive play. You don't hear him in the meat of the game, which is concerning, but I do agree he has value. There's guys that have value on that roster, but they're chipping away, man. They get points, they get wins, they get all these little things. So, Connie could sit back and kind of deal from a position of strength as the season goes on.
Yeah, peak pain is 11th from the bottom. That's if we're being fearful, then you're sending the 11th pick to Montreal. You're going to have Jersey and Florida's picks, which will be very late in round 1. That's what we're trying to avoid here.
Yeah, well, I think that's what you're trying to do. But at the end of the day, for Connie, he's got some young players that are pushing through at the Coronado. Obviously, it's really nice. Zara, you mentioned, making a bounce back game. Like guys like that who are just learning on the job. And I like the fact that some of these veterans are, they're not just going through the motions. They're engaged, and that's helping these young players, kind of be pros and see what it's like daily. And as the season goes on, you can start to mix and match and try, challenge guys, put them in situations where they can either have success or they fail and go, okay, that wasn't for them. But that's up to Huska on a nightly basis.
It was one of those nights last night. If you dream on the future, if you're a Flames fan, it was your kind of night. Connor Zary was demoted to the 4th line in the previous game. He scores in the second period to give them that made it 1-0, I guess, at that point. Coronado, 1st-round pick, demoted to the AHL, brought back up, ties it, scores the game-winning goal. And for Wolf, he only faced 23 shots, but 15 of his 21 saves were in the first period. It was kind of a shooting gallery. He's been really good. I think that there's always that kind of, I think he's good. Is he good? Can he be good? We think we're watching something special here. I think he can. And last night was kind of one of those nights where you felt pretty good about it.
I think we should just agree on this show, and maybe I'm wrong. Like, he's a good goaltender. Dustin Wolf is an NHL good goaltender. The only thing that I continue to look for is what is his progression? What is his ceiling? Is he a backup? Is he a tandem? Is he a 1? Or is he an elite number 1? Elite number 1, there's 6, 7 of them in the league. So that's the goal. Can he be UC Saros? And Saros has had a slow start, but he's still an elite goaltender in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, that's the question for me. Pinder, you talk about it all the time. All this guy has done is win awards and dominate every level he's gotten to. Now he's on the biggest stage. It's going to take time, but I like him. I think he's I think there's no doubt he's an NHL goaltender. It's just where does the dust settle for Dustin Wolf? That's really what it is. No pun intended.
How do you approach him and Vladar if you're the Flames goalie crew, LaBarbera, Siglet, and others?
And can you throw Cooley in there too? Only because he's played so well. The Wranglers are 9-2. They lost last night, but
9-game winning streak ended.
Well, Cooley's an interesting one because I think it was a kind of a sneaky little play by Connie, right? Like you bring him in, and there's depth in that position. Keep in mind, now remind me, Vladar, is he on an expiring contract?
Yes, UFA.
So there's your exit plan, really. Yeah. You know, if you ask me, if there's an injury or a team that's looking for either an upgrade or somebody who can be an NHL goaltender that doesn't cost you millions and millions of dollars, that's Vladar, because Wolf's not going anywhere. I think Cooley is kind of, I don't want to say found money, but he's a guy that can, give minutes at the NHL level and has. And, Vladar, I think, what did Tree get for him? Was it a second rounder he paid for him from Boston?
Third with Boston. I want to say that's 3 years ago.
Okay, so
maybe you can relay him into a second now if things go really well. If it's mediocre, it's a third.
I think you could turn him into a second rounder in the right setting. Again, for a team that either has an injury or something. So that's to me where there is some flexibility for Connie. Again, it comes back to Connie having strength with his cards because he doesn't have to do anything with any one of these guys.
Right. What's the league consensus on a guy like Vladar? Like I look at Colorado and I'm like, how long are they going to ride this out?
Solution there.
Like is he a solution for them? Is that becoming not yet maybe, but
it's not yet because they went and got Kakkonen, right? And they put him in the minors and he's come up. There's Eustace Annunen, who's got the biggest head you've ever seen in your life. I walked by him and I was like,
I did hear that.
Oh, this kid is like got this squat.
He looks like he's chubby, and then you're like, he's chiseled, but he's got this furnace face. He looks like he's
big head. But you know what?
Is it an orange on a toothpick?
Yes.
Heed pants now. But no, they like him and he's played well for them at the AHL level. I think the biggest question mark is just Georgie 5, right? Like is he played 60 some games last year, led the league, I believe, in wins. It's just he is wildly inconsistent to the point where I think they're trying to take minutes off of him just so that they can get his game in order. So I do believe Vladar, if you're getting back to your initial question, Rhett, Vladar has value, but is Joe Sakic saying, is he better than the guys that we have incumbent? I would say no, because Joe believes he's got Noonan, who they're developing, and Kakkonen, who they kind of believe can be an NHL guy. So and you got to get your number one in order. I'm just more looking at a team that has two guys, and then they've got no NHL experience afterwards. For the guys up the road. If Stuart Skinner blows his knee out, now you're looking at Calvin Pickard and Olivia Rodrigo. Olivia Rodrigo is my daughter's favorite singer.
She might be as good.
Yeah. Apologies. But Oliver Rodriguez. And he didn't look great in the preseason. So all of a sudden now, if you're looking for a veteran guy, that's where Connie has got some leverage and goes, I got a guy who can play, and he's not going to cost you a king's ransom, but it will be a second rounder or a live player of my choice.
Okay, so then back to the original. How you understand that you can really work on shining this jewel as an asset at the trade deadline in Vladar. You can also see what you can learn about Dustin Wolf in his first full season in the NHL, where he's actually got a shot at winning a job. Are you comfy just alternating them unless there's a superlative performance? Because that's what they've done. They've alternated with the exception of after a Vladar shutout, he started back-to-back. That was the only consecutive starts we've seen all year.
I'm comfortable with it because I'm looking at the big picture. And the big picture is, what is a magic number for Dustin Wolf this season? Keep in mind this season. Like if there's a stepladder of progression, you don't have to force feed 65 games on him and go, oh, you know what? He's not a 65-game starter. Maybe the progression is by the time he's 27, he will be a 60-game starter. So do you build it up and get him 45 this year? can you get him something with a 5 in it? So I like the fact that they're going back and forth, because what you're doing is you're keeping it very competitive, which it is. You want guys fighting for the net. You don't want it to be, hey, it doesn't matter how I play, I'm going right back in. That luxury is only for 6 to 8 guys in the league. Everybody else should be fighting for the net, because for the most part, the league is tandems. So I would say, right now, going back and forth, but there should be a separator at some point where it's like, okay, this guy, let's see if he can handle a 5-game stretch of playing 5 games in 8 days in a bunch of different cities under different circumstances, and kind of inch him through that. But, LaBarbera and Jordan Sigalet, they know what they're doing. Like they've been there. They got a pulse. They understand how these guys are wired behind closed doors a lot better than I am, because I don't know. Danny Vladar, I've met several times. Seems like a really good guy. I've met Dustin Wolf a few times. Seems like a quiet guy who just kind of does what he, stops pucks and does what he does. But I don't know him personally. These guys will know them and kind of know their fabric. So to answer your question, I'm fine with it going back and forth, but I think there will be a few times where there'll be separators this year, and you might see Wolf get something in the high 40s or low 50s. Yeah. That would be my goal for him this year, to see where on that progression.
The Flames will play in Boston next up, and we'll talk about the Bruins tomorrow, but Bruins were in a bad way, and then they kind of turned it around and won a couple of games back-to-back, shutouts for both goalies, and then they lose to the Leafs. I was reading this morning. It's the first time in 8 regular season games that the Leafs got a win against Boston. Montgomery, hot seat, or it seems to be under fire. He sat Pasternak, but he was back in yesterday, says no big deal, and that happens, I guess, but
yep.
To sit your star for an entire period. What are you hearing, I guess, is what it comes down to. Anything at all, or what's the vibe on Boston? Because it's not really it's win now. It's not a rebuild, but they are kind of young. I don't know where they are in their arc, I suppose.
I think they are lumped together with all of these other teams. So the Boston Bruins have 6 wins. The Toronto Maple Leafs have 7 wins. Tampa Bay has 7 wins. Ottawa has 6 wins. Detroit has 5 wins. Buffalo has 5 wins. And the Montreal Canadiens have 4 wins. So with 6 teams are separated by 6 points. And some games, like the Ottawa Senators, have 2 games in hand on some of them. Detroit has 3 games in hand. They've only played 11 games. So I would say this, like there's, it's easy to point at Boston and go, geez, like what's going on there? I could go to Tampa, lost 3 in a row. I can go to the Leafs that, lost 2 on the weekend, and hey, they got a big win and a big shutout last night, got the monkey off their back. Now parade's back on. I don't know. I think, these teams, the one thing I always point out, there's more organizations that have won the Stanley Cup in October and November. Mm-hmm. This is what it is. Some of these fan bases are like, yep, that they're destined to do this. They're destined to do that. So I would say to Boston, to all of these teams, Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, the Leafs, Tampa, you need consistency. And I haven't seen any one of those teams that have found their game on a consistent basis yet. Now, the season's still young. For the most part, we're looking at 70 games left. We know what it's like the first month and a half where your habits aren't there. Some nights you look like world beaters. Some nights you look like, hey, we're out to lunch. So I look at Jimmy Montgomery being on the hot seat because there's an expectation in Boston. But I would say Detroit has that expectation. Buffalo, Montreal, all these teams that are trying to take that next step and chase down the Tampas and the Floridas and the Torontos, and I include Boston in there. So I look at the Atlantic I think this is going to be a dogfight. And you can't lose 5 games in a row if you're in the Atlantic, because you will be at the bottom. And you win 5, you might get that separator, might be up there, kissing up against Florida, who, doesn't seem like they've taken their foot off the gas here at 9-3-1. So that's the most interesting thing for me as I look through the league, and a team that's won 7 games feels superior to a team that's won 6. And you're like, okay, you're one bad weekend away from being, kissing up against San Jose, who's got 4 wins now, so it's way too early for me to be it's more about the internal expectation.
Very level-headed take, Noodles. Very level-headed and common sense. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Frank said it too. This is just going to be the Atlantic this year. Like, it's just going to be a lot of pressure and rotating chairs outside of a couple.
And there will be fan bases that will be on fire and losing their what, because you're like, what's going on here? You wake up one day and you're out of the playoffs. You're in a wild card spot. You're in a top 3 spot. And you know what? This market will be like that in Toronto. I think it'll be like that in Tampa. It's certainly like that in Boston, because I think Boston just comes with this like, hey, we expect to be a top tier team every year. They've just got this, I think it's on Twitter or something that one kid that's been to how many
parades.
Yes.
It's
like it's actually gross, right? So that's you go into New England, there's that expectation. It's like that's what we expect, because we see winners every year. So I think you look around the league, they're outside of Winnipeg, I guess. LA 8-3-3, but the guys up the road, they're 500, and it looks like McJesus might play tonight. I thought I read that, but
yes,
either way, like nobody has found their just niche of it. Like, hey, we're dialed in, and this is the way we're going to play all season long. It's still been your roller coaster up and down, outside of a couple teams that are at the top and a couple teams that are at the bottom.
Senators took it on the chin last night in Buffalo. You were there, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Good. What is it? Good at home, not so much on the road. It's they're one of those teams, and Ryan kind of brings it up. Where are we at? Because you've been rebuilding. You get some high picks. You get some exciting young players.
Get the goalie.
You get the goalie, but the results kind of seem the same. Again, early. Do they give you any kind of confidence, or what do they give you that kind of vibe that this is a year that they do make a charge and a real threat at a playoff spot?
The only reason I would say yes, that they give me a different vibe, is I feel like this year we'd be speaking, like a year ago we were speaking, they're 6 points out of a playoff spot. Like they were always like they've always had dreadful October and Novembers.
Chasing.
So you're never in a position where it's like, and then they come on near the end and you're like, boy, you know what? We ended up with 82 points. So now, you know what? Next year it's going to be 90 and we're going to be a playoff team. And I always say, well, who's coming out? But maybe it's Boston this year. I don't know. Maybe, Matthews stays out longer and it's Toronto. Maybe it's Tampa. Like, I don't know. But somebody's coming out, or there's going to be a 5th team from the Atlantic and only 3 from the Metro. But I will say this, like Ottawa has a lot. They look different this year. And what I mean by that is they're more mature. Tim Stützle I think he's got 16 or 17 points now in 11 or 12 games. Brady Tkachuk has had a nice streak. The things that were hurting them last year, in a few losses this year, have creeped up. The inconsistency, the game within the game. So I'll give you an example. Last night, I thought early on the Senators were the better team. You're playing against a very, very struggling Buffalo Sabres, a desperate team that had lost 3 in a row. So you knew they were going to hit the ground running, because Lindy Ruff, benched Samuelson. He benched Yukiharu or whatever, the defenseman, right shot. So there was turmoil going on there. You knew Buffalo was due for a big game. So Ottawa starts really good, and UPL, the goaltender, makes some big saves early. And then if you look at what Ottawa struggled with, starting periods. They start the second period, they give up a goal 17 seconds in. You barely, coach is barely on the bench, and they give up a goal. Early in the third period, it's 2 goals in like 23 seconds. Game's over. You can't win games when you drop the puck and you're chasing the game. So, and the other thing I'll point to was last night in a vacuum, Ottawa's got a really good power play. They were 0 for 3 last night. You got to score in your power play. And their penalty kill, they gave up 2 goals on the penalty kill. So special teams, you go throughout the league. If your special teams stink, you're having a tough time winning games or getting points in this league, because everybody 5-on-5 knows how to play.
Just not a lot of wiggle room for teams like that, right? Like you say, tonight it's a goalie wasn't sharp.
Yep.
Then the power play wasn't good. Our PK wasn't strong. We weren't ready to go. You just got to be so consistent, and things have to go right on a nightly basis when you are one of those teams. And the league's kind of full of them. Even the good, even the what we say the great teams, the good teams, they struggle with it. So it's hard to now Buffalo.
Lanova, some wings, a little pizza.
No, I didn't.
No.
I literally went down yesterday morning. I had like too much on my plate. I didn't even go to morning skate. So then I just went in. I had to go to Target because my wife had to return. They went to Target 2 weeks ago and bought a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
And then apparently the lady behind the counter was 114 years old. She left one of those tags on.
Oh
no.
So my daughter couldn't wear these pants.
Can't wear it out. Yeah.
So as I'm pulling out yesterday, like my wife calls and goes, "Can you return these pants to Target in Buffalo?" I'm like, "You don't think I got a job to do here?" Like now I'm at Target walking through customer service. Can you take this tag off? They're like, "Are you stealing this?" And
yeah.
Anyway, so, and then of course, retro, you know that I love PF Chang's. So I had to pop in there at Galleria, get a little PF Chang's on the way out. And then sat at the hotel for a couple hours, called the game, and drove back last night. So it was a quick in and out. And I had to charge my car because I had a Tesla, so I had to, plug in.
Was Big Head there with you? Were you in between the benches with Robert?
I did talk to Robert, the mascot, but I was up top because I was working with a young guy named Matt Cullen because Gordon Miller was calling the game, the Leaf game last night. So I was working with a new guy. So when we work together, the young guys, I'm side by side. And there's no room in between the benches when Rob Ray is standing there. Like, he is an absolute monster of a human being.
They're putting him in the Buffalo Hall of Fame, which I think is great.
So putting a new wing?
You guys know I love Rob Ray. I think his son was there, or he had a kid with him.
Yeah, Robert. Yeah.
Okay. Good-looking kid. Like, it just
blonde-haired. Yeah.
Anyways, he walked by, had a little chat, stop and chat with him, and then, shook his hand, and it's like his hand is like him handing you 5 bananas. His hand is so big, like it's like it just swallows your hand. Like he's such a monster. But what a good guy. God, I love that guy. And of course, Marty Biron was there. I had a good chat with Marty.
Did you get to talk?
Okay, you think I talk? This guy, man, Marty was he was on fire last night. But it's good. It's always nice to see. I didn't get to see Duffer or any of the main crew because I just kind of did my thing and got out of there. But I was happy for Buffalo in that sense because I don't like to see teams that are trying to turn it around struggle. And I really like Tage Thompson. I really like Alex Tuck. I think Dylan Cousins is going to be a really good player. I just think he struggled early on. I think UPL, the goaltenders, kind of come around as a guy that they can trust. He's big, man.
Has Levi been better? Has he been?
You know what? What my comparison of Devon Levi is, he's a young Marc-Andre Fleury. As far as when you watch Marc-Andre Fleury early in his career, he was really busy, just active and fast and explosive. And as Fleury got better and more experienced, his game just kind of shrunk and just came together. You could still be explosive, but you don't have to go out of position and open holes and, look small in the net. And, I look at Levi and I've watched him play. I like his skill set, but I think he's really explosive and he almost creates holes for himself because he's trying so hard. I want to stop this puck. I want to do this instead of letting it come to him. But I think he's a good young goaltender, and he could be a guy, if he settles in, that maybe, the next Olympic time around, not this one, to be kissing up on it. I like him.
Pinder's shaking his head.
There's no bloody goalies. We're talking about frickin' Aiden Hill and Sam Monson.
No, but here's my. Do you want my argument?
At the Four Nations. What the hell's happened to all our goalies? This is a disaster.
Do you want my argument for this? Okay, yeah. Because I actually had an argument with somebody about debate the other day. So first and foremost, I need to go on record and say I don't have much passion for this Four Nations thing whatsoever. I'm sorry. I know we're in the media. I know we need to build it up as best on best in that. The best goalie is not playing in it because he's Russian. Arguably, the best player might not be playing in it in Kucherov. He's Russian. Draisaitl's not playing in it. He's a top 5 player in the world. So it's not really best on best. It just happens to be 4 countries that are playing against each other. Secondly, people are like, okay, Canada, they are the worst on paper when it comes to goaltending, okay? Because the other goalies are better and they're big game goaltenders. And I'm going, okay, well, define big game goaltenders because, hold on, somebody's ringing my front door. I can't go. So big game goaltenders are guys who have won before, okay? Well, if you look at Jordan Binnington is the one. He's won, and he's played on the biggest stage, and he won a Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, okay? Aiden Hills won a Stanley Cup. Darcy Kemper's won a Stanley Cup. I think Marc-Andre Fleury should be in the conversation as well because he might be a great mentor, and in a short tournament, maybe he can call back some of the old magic. So there's a 4th Stanley Cup winner. Those are all Canadian guys that have played on the biggest stage, which is the Stanley Cup final. Because when Rhett and I were kids, when we were playing road hockey, we didn't go, okay, who's going to be in the final for the Four Nations Cup? We played Game 7, Stanley Cup final. That's the biggest platform.
It did for the Canada Cup, though. Come on now. Let's not get too crazy here. We do want to see Bedard play with McDavid at least once, right? We can at least agree on that.
I get it, but I was being a smartass, but you know what I mean. Is the biggest stage in hockey is the Stanley Cup finals. It's nothing else. It's nothing else. So these guys have been on the biggest stage and had success. Now their teams have helped them.
Yeah,
but guess what?
There's no top 10 goalie in there, Jamie. You know there isn't. There isn't.
Well,
if you rank them, they're not. None of those guys are top 10.
You're right. But they don't have to be a top 10 goaltender. They have to play like one.
Yeah, they're not going to lose a tournament because of goaltending. They're good enough to win with just okay goaltending.
Right.
Yeah, they're not good goalies. They're okay. They'd be the weakest goaltenders of the whole tournament.
But the most decorated. That's the craziest part. Right, like technically the most decorated.
Sure, yeah, their team awards were good collectively. I don't want to cheer for Jordan Binnington. He seems like a Richard, right? Like Aiden Hill was gotten for a 4th rounder. Things happen. Like
I get it, but you know what?
It ain't sexy.
So you need McDavid and Crosby and McKinney. You need,
and
as
Bedard.
Canadians, we want the best players and the best goalies and the best defensemen and not
and I better like them.
Well, I don't know if you saw this TSN list, but they had Chris Tanev as the 7th, and I was like, okay, like now we're trying to be, we're gonna think ourselves right, screw ourselves right into a hole here.
There was no Tanev buzz when he's in Calgary. You know how it works. He's a Leaf, and all of a sudden,
we had Drager on last week. I think that was maybe his submission. He's like, yeah, I took it pretty hard when we threw Tanev's name.
Okay, so I missed the day on my show because I was calling the game, and I came back, and they're like, oh, we're going to go over Craig Button and Mike Johnson's list, and Chris Tanev. I was like, what? and they're like, Chris Tanev is on the 7th on the list. And I go, I love Chris. Because this isn't we all love Chris.
Of course.
Great defender.
Oh, he's not the best defenseman on his team. Like Morgan Riley is, Morgan Riley
a different role.
In a tournament where you need to be high paced and skate. And I understand that. If you're doing the Rob Zomner pick at, hey, we need a penalty killer for the Olympics, then let's do this. Yeah. But I'm like, I could think of 5 guys just off the top of my head that I would place in front of that. So again, if you're, like Rhett, going back to Rhett, if you're choosing the best of the best, doesn't matter where they slot. I agree with you, Pinder. I agree with you, Rhett, as far as, the goaltending would be 4th in this tournament out of 4 on paper. But my argument is still the person came at me saying, well, they need to have, this is the biggest stage. They need to have success. And I was like, well, they kind of have. It on paper, none of them are a top 10 goaltender right now.
I used it last week. I want to use it again. It's a bit of an Albert scenario. Albert, Albert. He's going to come back. He's going to play well. Everyone's.
Do you
gonna
remember
want him.
Albert? Do you know the Albert reference, James?
Played the commercial at the end of the show last week.
Remember the Canadian Tire commercial where poor Albert
Yes.
was the last guy picked at the outdoor rink?
Yeah.
When found some
then
guy on a lawn chair that wasn't even going to play, they picked him ahead of Albert.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's so
Albert
you're
has his name on his jersey, and he's a big winner.
So you think that so what you're saying is like Aiden Hill's going to be the
Albert Binnington.
MVP of the tournament.
He was already the Albert for the year in the NHL. He was added for a fourth and was a cup MVP. Like that's Albert.
Yeah, but he wasn't. It wasn't a guy from Port Colborne who had 40 rum and cokes and wore a jersey to the game, and they're like, "Go stand in the net there." Like the guy is, he
was one of the top 80 goals in the world. Probably 60 to 80 you would have slotted in the beginning of that year. And he ended up being an MVP of the
Jordan Binnington just took over second place in the St. Louis Blues all-time wins category last night.
Yeah.
And he'll pass Mike Liut and be the winningest St. Louis Blues goaltender.
I think what people don't like is Jordan Binnington, the personality. That's what it is they don't like I thought it was funny the other day where he had that sly look on his face. Like they were giving up an 8 spot and it was ugly in Ottawa. And he's starting to push around. He's at the bench and he's trying not to laugh. But he's laughing going, I'm going to be an idiot here because,
quick shower. Let's go.
Joel Hofer forgot to put his pads on tonight. Now I got to go clean this mess up because that's what it was. It was a mess. That was an ugly one. But honestly, I don't disagree. I think the Canadian goaltending, I think we're in a downtrend cycle, but there's some good ones. And it just, you need one that's special to push through, and we'll see who it is. I don't know. We've seen guys get better as they get older. Anthony Stolarz put up a shutout last night. The guy's never played more than 28 games in a regular season. He started 23. That's the max he's ever started. He's the Toronto Maple Leafs #1 goalie right now. And he's 30 years old. I saw guys get better when they were 29, 30, 31, because they understood the mental part of the position. So we'll see. I mean, goaltending is a weird position. Unless you're really special, everybody else is just kind of really good. That's it.
What if we weaned you off the rum and cokes? Could we because you're a Canadian. You got your birth certificate. As you get older, you're wiser and you're more composed.
I can barely touch my toes. I've got and I never had flexibility when I played. I haven't had brown liquor since April 20th, 2003. But
that's a white rum.
Specific for it not to be vodka.
Vodka's good because I enjoy my life. There's not a problem with that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Could you imagine me making a skate save in today's world? Yeah.
Get out there.
I'll never forget this. This would have been 2003, 2004, something around there. I was playing for the Flames. And it was the second period. We were playing the LA Kings. And somebody went to shoot, like Ziggy Palfy or something, took a slap shot from center ice. And I just stood there and I directed it to the corner, kind of like just rolled my stick and with my skate out and kicked it to the corner. And Robin Regier was coming back to get the puck. And he screamed, "Skate save, old school hockey." And I laughed because I was like, oh, my God, I just made a skate save. Now, this was 20 years ago when they were still just kind of inching their way out of the game because Marty Brodeur, I think, was still making them. But, man, oh, man, I'll never forget that as long as I live. Like Reggie screaming that as he was coming back into the defensive zone. Skate save, old-time hockey. I'm like, yeah, pretty much did that. It was a shot from so far away I cleanly made a skate save.
Heel toe and away we go.
Exactly.
Get that heel out there. Okay, we've kept. Oh, you got one. I got one more. Retro, go ahead.
I just want to say next week. When are you on Cribs? Because we had the wide shot of your house. This is very, very fancy.
Yeah.
Like I thought you were in TV
about?
and like a backup goalie. And this is where you live.
That is
my
quite
God.
I'm not allowed. I have a little setup, but I was told by Jack I can't have my setup.
Well, that's true.
It's like no jerseys, no nothing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit in my kitchen. Yeah, so
I wouldn't leave my kitchen if I had that.
Oh,
My
it's
God.
beautiful.
there's the deck and the pool and all that out there, and then this is
Hotel.
we like space, so there's a great room here. So if I'm echoing, I'm yelling and screaming. I'm in my kitchen.
Well, I wondered, is there any hardware on that mantle back there? Do I see a trophy or some kind of is that the
That would be my kids. I don't know. I have like my office over here.
yeah.
Like but my office has a jersey in it. I'm not allowed to
I know, I understand. I don't think it was a shot on the backdrop. It's just you have it's a lovely
Very
home.
fancy house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
You got to save. It's not how much you make, it's how much you save. That's what it is, right?
It's a hard one.
Send me some of those fancy water bottles and get off
Oh,
our
there
show.
it is
We gotta
again.
go.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on.
I'm sending water bottles. You never send me an address to send them to.
Oh,
That's the
Don't talk to these guys. You have a very low chance of.
Yeah, it's tough.
Talk to
Noodles.
Jack or if you want
Yeah.
I
something.
don't even know where that guy lives. And
Yeah, you take the shit and abuse, but then you go and try and make good on us. Well, I don't even have what I need. And now, because I gotta let you go because we're keeping you a long time. I need to know another very important question. PF Chang's. I get a lot of people don't. I love it. I get it's a chain. I love it. What's your order at PF Chang's?
Okay, so I've kind of done this greasy order lately, which is so everywhere, because I was in Denver last week, there's a PF Chang's, and I order through Uber Eats all the time. But I order kids' portions so I can get more of them. So I go with the kids' fried rice with chicken because it's just egg, chicken, and the rice and some teriyaki. There's no onions. I don't like any of the nonsense. So it's just, that's what it is. So I get the kids' chicken fried rice. Then I get the Mongoli beef. I asked them for extra well done, a little crispy.
Ooh.
Okay. But the kids' portion of it. And then I get a kids' portion of orange chicken. And that's my go-to. All of them come with rice but I like the fried rice. It's a little too much to eat for lunch, but I like to just mix and match.
Sure.
That's what I do at PF Chang's right now.
And do you try and sell it all? Thank you. The kids are going to love this. The kids, they just love PF.
Embarrassing. Like I do this a lot when I'm on the road, is I will order off the kids menu because I have the palate of a 4-year-old. So
Yeah.
I'm like, can my son get some chicken fingers and fries? And then
Quesadilla.
they're like, oh, like dinner for 2. I'm like, no, just for 1. Just bring up 1. Like, and then the person comes to the door and it's just me standing there. And I've ordered chicken fingers and fries, and it comes with popcorn and an apple instead of anything other. That the Westin, they have a good Irish menu. It's
How many sets of cutlery do you need?
Just 1. I'll eat with my hands. It's fine. My
Yeah,
kids,
the kids
He'll eat with
chicken
his
fingers. They can just use their hands.
that's what I do. It's kind of a greasy move. It's not me being cheap. I like that food. It's plain and it's simple. You start messing around with adults' food and they're throwing onions and tomatoes and nonsense in there. You're like, what the hell is this? It's all dressing and garnishes. I don't like.
I've always like. We used to go to the Mongoli grill, rice and sauce and meat.
Well, I wanted my picture on there, but you'd have to order like $50 worth there. You couldn't do it. You have to sit there for 3 weeks to get your picture on the wall. It's terrible. Like, remember they weighed it?
They weigh? Yeah, that's how you pay, is how much it weighs.
It's like, oh, that's 1.8 pounds. You just ate of chicken and rice and vegetables or whatever they put in that. It was. But
it would make you think, because you're paying by the weight. They're going to weigh us. Okay, what's the best bang for my buck? What's delicious but is yet light?
Teriyaki sauce.
Yeah, don't put too many sauces in there. It's going to weigh that.
They condemn that place. It's not there anymore. I think that's Sunterra now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone. It's something different.
That's
I don't know
Sunterra.
what.
Yeah.
It's that.
All right, great stuff, Noodles. Appreciate you, buddy. Have a
Chat
great
soon.
one. You bet. There he is. It's on the Crystal Waters Insider Hotline.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.